Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel Codathrone. I am Achyutwardhan and I will be talking about today Apache Kafka. Before moving forward, we will go through the documentation of Apache Kafka and we will get to know how the Apache Kafka works and what all event does it carries. So let's get back to the documentation and see what all things it carries. So now you can see we are in the Kafka website. Little bit, let me tell you, I will be teaching you about the scenarios what producer and consumers carries in the Apache Kafka. But beforehand, let me introduce you to the Apache Kafka while going to the documentation. Now, when we go to the documentation, let me tell you first what is Apache Kafka. Apache Kafka is an open source distributed event streaming platform. Now, what do you know about event streaming platform? Event streaming platform means that there will be a producer, there will be a consumer, and there will be a broker in between. So what happens is the producer produces an event. When the producer produces an event, it goes to the broker. So once the event is received in the broker, the consumer asks the brokers that is there any event? If the event is present, the consumer will have the event or the message. Now let's head back to the documentation and go through what it is written. Now here we can see that it is written that Apache Kafka is an event streaming platform, but what does this mean? As I said you earlier, there is a publisher and a consumer where they will publish an event, the subscriber will just consume the event. And there is also written there is a continuous import and export of data from other system. Now, what is this import and export of data from the other system is? The other system can be anything like other Kafka, or it can be a data source like databases. Now, how it works is we can use Kafka Connect, where the import and export of the data to the broker, the Kafka broker is done. I will explain you later. I have a well diagram where I can explain you about the Kafka Connect. Let's go to the second point. The second point tells us that we can store streams of event durably and reliably for as long as you want. So it is not like RabbitMQ that the once the event is published or it is consumed by the consumer, the messages will be deleted. Third point is to process streams of event as they occur or retrospectively. This point is held by Kafka streams where you can transform your data. Now let's go and see how the Kafka works in nutshell. Kafka is a distributed system consisting of servers and clients that communicates via high performance TCP network protocol. Okay. Now, what are servers and clients? Now, Kafka runs on multiple servers. Okay. There are many servers. So, Kafka runs on clusters of servers. Now, few servers behaves like a storage layer. Now, few servers behaves like a storage layer that are brokers. As I told you, there is a Kafka broker. You can refer it as a storage layer. Now, other servers run the Kafka Connect to continuously import and export of data as event streams to integrate Kafka with your existing system, such as relational database or with the other Kafka clusters. Now, what are clients? Clients, dozen. There are dozens of clients. Like you can see, like there are libraries for Go, Python, Java. So we will be talking about Java in this video. So let's get back to the main concepts of the Kafka. What are the main concepts of Kafka? Firstly, there is an event. What is event? Events are something which occurred. Okay. Now, who will occur the event? That's our publishers. Publisher will publish an event. Now, what are consumers? Fourth point is consumers. Who are consumers? Consumers are those who will subscribe the event. Now, what is topic? Topic are like folders. Events are like files. So, events are stored in the topic. Now, let me tell you, there is a concept where topics are distributed in a partition. Okay. Now, what is the partition? Partitions are the segments of topic. Let's go to a documentation. So here we are in the documentation. There are four components in Kafka, that is producer, consumer, Kafka Connect, broker and Kafka streams. We'll go one by one. What happens is the producer produces an event, it goes to the broker. That's a storage layer. Now once a broker receives it, it will pass the event to the consumer. Okay. Now how the producers and consumer works, we will see in different scenarios. Let's go to Kafka Connect now. Now, Kafka Connect helps in import and export of data from the data source, as we have read earlier. And we have a Kafka stream where we can transform the data. So before moving to the scenarios of multiple producers and multiple consumers, let me tell you what all things event carries. Event carries 3 to 4 things, like event carries keys, event carries values and timestamps. We can also have metadata, but it's optional. Now, let me tell you that event can be without keys or with keys. So, for this scenario, let's go to the documentation and learn about it. Now, we are in the documentation where we see that the producer produce an event without keys and with the keys. For a small overview, let me tell you, and we'll get back to the scenarios one by one. Now, what happens is when the producer produces an event, the event passes through the round robin algorithm and it goes to a random topics. Okay, now it is decided on a basis of load balancing of the partition or the event, load balancing of the event. So once an event arrives, the event first is going to the partition 1. Let me describe this event as partition 1, this is partition 2, this is partition 3, and this is partition 4. Now what happens is when the event is occurred through the round robin algorithm, it will go to the partition 1. Then again a event occurs, then it will go to the partition 2. Remember, they don't have keys. Okay, so they will be placed according to the round robin algorithm. 3 will go to the 3, then 4 will go to the 4, 5 will come here, 6, and so on. Now once the event is placed in the partition, now we have different scenarios of the consumer. We will head back it later, but the messages will not get to the consumer in an ordered manner. So it can be like hi, hello, for. So if three messages are transferred, they can receive as like for, hello, hi. It can be in unordered manner. Now when the producer produces an event with key, now, when the producer produces an event with key, the key get hashed, and with the hashed value, it will decide which partition to go. Now, in these scenarios, you can see that the event 1 is in the partition 1. So, it will only occur in the partition 1 only, like 1, 1, 1, and 1. So, similarly, if the event 2 is occurred, then 2, if it is allotted to the partition 2, it will only occur in the partition 2. Similar to the other events like 3 is in partition 1, 4 is in partition 2, 6 it is in partition 4, and this will be allocated with the hash values. Now once these values are allocated, once the values are in the particular partition, the messages will be in an ordered format. So the basic difference is clear. When we use key, the messages will get to the consumer in ordered manner. It is without key. The messages will be in unordered manner. Now let's get to the scenarios when we have producers without key and consumers without consumer group. Now what is consumer group? Now let's say there is a group where we have 1 or 2 or 3 of consumer. Name itself suggests that this is a group of consumers. So let's get to the scenario one by one. Now, producer scenario 1 says that there is a producer without key. This is a scenario when the producer is without key and consumer with the consumer group. What it tells is keep messages go to the partition in the round robin manner. Within a consumer group, each partition goes to exactly one consumer. So let's say this is a consumer C1, C2, C3, and they all are in the same consumer group. So each partition will be given to each consumer. Let's say if the partition is more, then one consumer can have more than one partition. So no two consumer in the same group will get the same event. So this is the case for the scenario 1, where equal to the number of partition, then each consumer will get the partition. Now let's get to the second scenario where producer is with key but consumers with consumer group. What will happen is, like as I said, कि अगर ये key है, then they will be hashed and it will go to a particular partition. And secondly, when there is a consumer group, so each partition will be shared to the each consumer. As you can see in this diagram, like producer with key, it is hashed and it is placed to a partition, like user A is given always to partition 1, user B is always to partition 0, and user C is always to partition 2. Once it is in the topic, now the partition will be distributed to each consumer. Let's say partition is more than 3, then one of the consumer will have more than one partition. So here you can see the result, the key determines the partition and only one consumer in a group can consume events of a given key. So now the scenario 3 is that the producer is without the key and consumer is without the consumer group. मतलब कि the all of the three consumers are independent. Now what will happen? Message will go in a round robin across the partition, but each consumer is independent, so all will consume all the messages. So now you got it. Like the partition 0 will be given to the consumer A and the consumer B. So now you can see that the producer has no key and there is a the events are distributed with the round robin partitioning. Now once it is distributed to the partition, now each consumer will receive all the partitions or the all the events. So the result is every consumer receives all events from all the partition and there is no load balancing. Now the fourth scenario is like producer with the key and consumer without the consumer group. Let me tell you, like key only decides which partition will it go. It not decides like which consumer, okay? The consumer without the consumer group. What will happen? Like distribution rule is key decides the partition, okay? Now every consumer gets all the partition because they are not in the group. So basic stuffs, let me summarize. Key if the consumers are in consumer group, okay, if the consumers are in consumer group, then the partitions will be distributed equally, okay, so there will be no duplicate partitions, okay. If there is a consumer A, consumer B and consumer C in a one consumer group and there is a partition of 3, partition 1, partition 2 and partition 3, then each will get each partition. If there is no consumer groups and all are independent, then they will receive events from all the partitions. This is a scenario for the consumers, if there is consumer group or not. Second scenario is when there is a producer with or without key. With key, they will go through the hash and the hash will decide which partition it should go. Secondly, if it is without key, then it will follow the round robin algorithm and through the round robin algorithm, it will be decided which partition it should go. So these are the four scenarios which will be confirmed. Now let's go get to the important rule, that is the partition cannot be shared by two consumers in the same group. Means same partition cannot be shared with the two consumers if they are in a consumer group. Secondly, the different consumer groups each get their own copy of data. Say like there are two consumer groups G1 and G2, so they will get the copy of data. Okay. Now there is a third scenario where consumer is less than the partition. So the consumer can get multiple partitions. So these are the scenarios which we were talking about, and this is the whole basic of Kafka. So now let's get into the implementation section, how we will implement the Kafka to the Java Spring Boot. So we will be now moving step by step in the implementation of Kafka. So the implementation of Kafka can be done in two types. Either you can do it locally or you can use the cloud. In this video, we will be covering the cloud scenario, how to integrate the cloud Kafka to the Java Spring Boot and use it. There is a free resource where you can use the Kafka cloud, that is event.io. Other websites would charge a cost from your credit card. In this event.io, you'd get 30 days and $300 USD as a credit. So now you can see that I have already created an account. You have to just create an account and go to the Kafka and just you need to turn on the service. Once you turn on the service, what you need to do is like you need to create a topic, that is you need to go to the topic. Once you go to the topic, you need to create topic. Once you create the topic, like I have OTP generator, I will click here as an OTP generator. Then we will proceed to advanced configuration. Now here it will show you that how many types of replications you need. Replication is like copies, and what how many partitions you need. For by default there is one partition, you can make it three. So I already have a OTP generator, so I will not make the topic. So once you created the topic, remember this topic you will be needed it while setting up this Kafka. Now once you the service is on, you can see here you have three things, that is access key, access certificate and CA certificate. You need to download all these three key certificate. Now once you have downloaded, we will head back to the configuration, how we will configure it. So now we are in the documentation part. You can see we have dependency and we have one dependency. You need to keep this dependency in wherever you want to make a producer or consumer, or producer and consumer both, whichever microservice you need. Now you need to keep this dependency. Once this dependency is done, now you need to do a configuration. What you need to do in the configuration is, we will come back to this part. We will go down. We will see this in application.yml. Now application.yml, you need to copy and paste this. Why to copy and paste this? You can see here that in the Spring, when you download the dependency, you will get this kafka.bootstrap server. You need to give this bootstrap server name. How you will get this bootstrap server name? When you go to this event.aio, you will see here that there is a service URI. You need to copy and paste this. Once you copy it and paste, now there are two ways to log in into the Kafka. First is using the username and password, and second is the SSL. Okay. So in this video, I will be telling you how to implement things through the SSL certificate. Now in the properties, you need to give here security protocol as SSL. Secondly, you need to give here trust store location. You need to create a resource. In the resource, you need to create a cert folder, and in the cert folder, you need to give this client.truststore.jks file. Now how you will create it, we will see it later. Secondly, you need to give the trust store password. For now, my trust store password is QWERTY12345. And after the trust store, you need to give this key stores. These two files are valuable in order to authenticate that you are a correct user or not. The second file you need to give here is the key store, that is client keystore.p12. After giving the URI, you need to give the full path of the file location. Otherwise, it will create an issue. Now, once the file location is given, you need to give the key store password, that is key store pass. I will tell you how to create these files using this keys, access certificate and CA certificate. Now, once you given this password for the key store, now you need to give the file type. As you can see, the key store file type is pkcs12. Okay, so for this you need to give the pkcs12, and for the trust store type you need to give the jks. Now in the SSL session timeout, when will be the timeout? The timeout should be the 45 seconds. Okay, now if this is a consumer, in the consumer, if the microservice is a consumer, then you have to give this part. That is, you need to give this group ID, that is OTP generated group, and this group ID you have to give it in the microservice configuration file. Then you have to give this key deserializer, value deserializer, and the properties. As you can see in the properties, we have a trust store package. So this, what is trust store package, is it in which type of microservice you want to trust. So here I am trusting the user model dot user model star. This is a user model file and this is a producer, and I am trusting this user model. Now the last thing you need to give is this spring.json.value. Is this the mail D2O? Why we are giving this mail D2O? Because we are passing a mail D2O from the producer to the consumer. We are using a similar mail D2O. Like you can say this is an object which will be used by both producer and the consumer. So we are having this default type. This is optional if you can have it or not. I'm using it. So now this is the configuration for the consumer. Now let's go to the producer configuration. It's similar. You need to give the bootstrap server. You need to provide the SSL certificate, trust store password, key store, trust store type, and key store type. After giving this is similar to consumer and producer. Now, what you have to give is, now you have to give this producer, which will come from Spring, Kafka, and then dot producer, dot key serializer, and the key serializer path. So this is the configuration for the producers. Now, how you will create this key store and the trust store. Now, for creating the key store and the trust store, I've given there is a command like, what is the CA pen? CA pen is this certificate, CA certificate. Now there will be a key store. Which type of key store you need to have? Client.truststore.jks and the store pass with no prompts. Why there is no prompt? If you give this command no prompt, it will not ask you for yes or no that if you want to create or not. First, if this key store is created, this trust store is created, you need to create the client dash keystore.p12. Now, in order to create, you need to just copy and paste this command. You will have this client key store. Just remember, in order to change the password, you just need to change the password from here, which I have given as key store pass. Okay. Now once this is created, now the three files which you will be having once you download is ca.pan, service.key and service.set. Let me tell you, like service.set and service.key will help you to create client's key store .p12 and capen will help you to create client.truststore.jks. Once you create these two files, you need to put these files in the resource folder. Let me go to the resource folder and let show you where it is being given. Now as you can see, we are in the send email service. We have a resource folder. So this resource folder I have a search where once it is created, I have just copy and pasted it here, and vice versa, I have provided the path for the files. As you can see here, I have provided the path here for the producer, users, Achyutavardhan, Atlas backend. Here you can see the user model, SRC main resource, and just the file path I have given. Make sure that you give the whole file path, otherwise it will be not be possible to consider this file path. Now, what to do next? Now, once you have given this configuration in the application.yml to the particular microservice, you need to be a producer or a consumer. So after this configuration, you need to create a service. How to create a service? Now in the user model, we have a services. We have created Kafka producer service. Now once we have created a Kafka producer service, you need to make it as a service. You have to give an annotation of service, and then you need to create a Kafka template. The Kafka gives you a Kafka template where it takes a string and a object. What is the string? String is the key and mail D2O is the object. So what we are passing here? Let us go to the D2O and see what is mail D2O. So here you can see the mail D2O sends the two subject and message. So what we are doing is, when the user gets registered, the email is being sent to the user's email address. So we have created this mail object where we send the where to be sent, what subject it should have, and what messages it is having. The message is containing the token key. Now once we have the mail D2O, you can just change it whatever type you want. Now you need to create a constructor for the producer in order to just place it over to the Kafka template. Okay. Now once you have created this constructor, in order to create the event, you need to create this function. The function is send mail event, where you will be sending this mail D2O, and the Kafka template will be sending this as a topic of OTP generator. As I have shown you here, we have a topic like this OTP generator. This should match with this topic, okay, and just send the mail D2O. Now what will happen and how is it happening? Let's go to the user service. Once we go to the user service, we will see that when we register a user, as you can see, when we register a user, registering a user profile, we are just creating a mail D2O where we are setting up how to whom we have to send, what subject it should be, and what type of link it should have. This is a link where it will, if they will, if he will, if the user will click, it will just get automatically verified. Now what we are doing is, this is the important point where we are using the Kafka producer. Remember, you need to auto wire this Kafka producer service. Now, once you have created auto wire, you need to use the function that dot to send email event. Now listen properly. You will not receive any response because it's a asynchronous task. So how you will verify? Now, in order to verify, you have to trust this service. There is no way to know, or there is no way that the consumer can send back the response and you will get the response and then you will check. You need to trust the service, Kafka service. This is the feature of the Kafka service where it maintains the anonymity of the microservices. And also, once you have sent the email, you just need to send the response vice versa. Okay. Now, once the event is published, the event will go, event will be registered in the topic in its particular partition. Now, what we have to do in the consumers? Similarly, you need to create the resource, cert file, and the key store file. Now, in the service, you need to create a Kafka consumer service. Here, the Kafka's consumer service will be a component, not a service. Now, once it is a component, you need to auto wire the email service. Why you need to auto wire the email service? As you can see here, we have a send mail function, and there is a service that is email service. Once we use this function, it will automatically send the email to the particular user. We will be showing you with an example running to it. Let me first explain. Like, this is a Kafka listener. Now you need to use this Kafka listener annotation in order to listen a particular topic. Now topic you have to give, that is OTP generator. Group ID which we have given, you have to just give consumer OTP generator group ID 1. So now once you have given this part, now you need to create a function where consumer will consume that topic, and once the consumer will consume the mail D2O, it will send the mail accordingly and it will print that the email has been sent. This is how the Kafka will work. Now let's see the implementation one by one. Before creating a user from the Postman, let's go to the terminal. Once we are in the terminal, let's rerun the user model and the send email model in order to check whether it is running properly or not. So you can see here the Kafka is disconnected. So we will reconnect it by rerun it. Now, as you can see that the send email service has been disconnected. Now we will run it again. Now, as you can see that the send email service started running and it is connected to the Kafka. As you can see, we have this, all the configuration which we have given, it's given here. So it is connected to the Kafka successfully. We'll go to the user model and we'll reconnect it again. Now as you can see that the user model also started running on the port 8084. Now we'll go to the Postman and just go with the example. So here we have an example. We'll just create the user. We'll go to user register. Now before that we need to have a temporary mail so that we can just test it. So we'll go for a temporary mail. Temporary mail. We'll go for this temporary mail. Once we receive this temporary mail, we'll copy this and just paste here. So once it is created, now we will change the username for this test user 9 and we will send. So as you can see that the user has been created and the email has been sent successfully. Now we'll go to this mail and here you can see that we have received an email here. Now in the email you can see that the verification token has been sent, and once we click here the user will be verified. So email verified success. Now let's see whether this topic or the event which we have generated is in the Kafka or not. Once we are on the topic, we need to just click on the topic, and in the topic we need to select here as a messages. Once we create select the messages, we can click here as fetch messages. Now once we have this first message, we can just see that there is a value which is given, and we have this value is in partition. Once we decode, we can see here it's an object, and see, that's it. That's it. We have this two subject and message value. So that's it, guys. We will have a second part of this video where I will tell you how to run the Kafka locally. For an instance, you can download the Kafka, and in the next video, I'll be teaching how to run the Kafka locally and how to use in the project. I hope you like this video. I hope you liked my explanation. We'll meet again on the next video. So for now, bye bye.